I want to talk next to Stephanie. Stephanie, who's calling in from Maine. Stephanie, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Oh, hi. How are you? You led off the show with a discussion of conversion therapy, and I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. I understand one of y'all is up in Canada. I just wanted to remind you that up until the recent ban on conversion therapy, Toronto was kind of a hotbed of conversion therapy. There's a fellow by the name of Ken Zucker at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto, who basically had, the practice was the accepted practice for years and years and years in some corners of the mental health field. Was indeed to view being queer as a mental illness of sorts.
Sure.
It was in the DSM in the early versions, I think.
Yes, it was.
DSM-3, DSM-4. I'm a veteran of those days, and as a queer person, trans person myself, I experienced that.
Wow.
Your neighbors to the south here in Maine banned conversion therapy and adopted gender identity as a protected class in 2019, which I'm very proud of. I wish I could say the same for the rest of the states. But the other thing I wanted to, you sort of got into a little bit of what conversion therapy was. But in the case of there's this fellow, Dallin Oaks, who's a member of the Quorum of the 12 of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who denied that when he was president of Brigham Young University back in the 70s, that such a thing never occurred. But this fellow, a graduate student at BYU by the name of Max McBride, had this little deal where men were shown pictures of nude men and women, and if the subject, I'm quoting from an article, if the subject, quote, experienced sexual arousal from a photograph of a nude male, how do you suppose they measured that? Well, they put little sensors on certain portions. He would receive a shock in the bicep. A gradual increase of voltage upon repeated arousals was to serve as a negative feedback stimulus that would, according to the hypothesis, reorient him from homosexual to heterosexual, whereupon photographs of nude females were supposed to elicit sexual arousal. So this is how cruel conversion therapy is.
It's literally, it's Pavlovian conditioning.
And it's so non-scientific.
Yeah.
I can't even believe it.
I don't know.
Medieval, and it's out and out torture, the immense psychological damage that's done on top of the indoctrination, particularly in certain religious traditions, that being outside of the cis-het norm is a sin against God, is one of the most appalling things that led me to abandon my faith at a very early age, because I could never believe that any compassionate God would play such a horrible trick on me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And especially since, you're supposed to have been beautifully and wonderfully made by God, right? And clearly they made you in a particular way that they then will punish you for. Like, that doesn't seem fair at all, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that there is a revisionist movement that's kind of happening with some of the more liberal Christians out there that will are really trying to make this case that, they were really talking about pederasty in a lot of these verses. They weren't talking about homosexuality, and they're trying, and I appreciate the effort. I appreciate that people are trying to change. I don't think it's the best way to change. Obviously, what I think the best way to change is to abolish it altogether. But let's hypothetically, let's say that Christians have been getting this all wrong, okay, for all this time. Look at the actual harm that's been done. Look at the millions of people's lives that have suffered because of this misinterpretation, right? So it doesn't even matter what the correct interpretation is. If this is how people have been doing it for literally thousands of years at this point, this treatment of this other class of person, that being someone who isn't a heterosexual or who isn't cis normative, then at what point can we even say, oh well, we got to fix this, we got to change this, we got to go this up? I mean, that's just what it is, right? You have to just call it for what it is.
And I mean, to me, it would be, if I can't trust that interpretation that we thought we had, how do I know what the correct interpretation is, right?
Right.
Are you just guessing that, oh, no, this is what they actually meant?
So I'll appreciate any Christian that wants to try to make, efforts to change the church, but I do think it's futile. I don't, at the end of the day, I don't know. Anyway, Stephanie, you want to say something?
I think it's important to recognize that it's only been recently when people have fully appreciated how cruel some of these things are or have been, to the point where they're being banned on a national scale or on a state scale. It's important to realize that, of course, people used to have, I mean, within my lifetime, people used to have the view that that these people need to be converted because it's unnatural. And it's in certain quarters, that's still the view, and it's unfortunate, and a lot of it does come out of religion, and a lot of it just comes out of human nature, because I think that religions spring from human nature, and people who are unaware of other ways of being human get scared.
Yeah. I can't think of another sin where you have to be tortured to be changed of it, right? Interesting how the sin of homosexuality just happens to be the one where you have to use some sort of physiological conditioning to really change. I wonder what that says about the people who view this thing. It's obviously disgusting. It's obviously not right. But I say it's obviously not right, but then again, like a couple of years ago, I don't know. I think a lot of people, I think what it is, Stephanie, is you're right. I think people are now recognizing the harm of this. I think people would be more sympathetic to this if they really realize the history that's really only been starting to be written in the past few decades, right? Because obviously people have been recording results and things, but that's not been widely publicized. That's not been a topic of national conversation up until very recent in our collective modern history. And I hope people, even folks who do go to church, who do see Christianity as their ideology, that maybe they'll say, well, maybe this part is at least wrong, and maybe we can at least get past that as a society, because ultimately we are going to have to live in a society with religious people, and they're going to be in part making laws and policy crafting, at least in our country. So like I'd rather take that. It's not ideal, right? I'd rather them like abandon it altogether, but like maybe as we keep pushing, as we keep having this conversation, hopefully more people can become sympathetic and realize why we're talking about this. It's not just a freedom to sin. It's not just a freedom to follow your desires. It's recognizing the human rights abuses that have been happening at these institutions. So anyway,
I'd like to leave you with this thought, that people used to sign up for this kind of therapy.
Yeah.
Right.
And they still do.
Right.
They still do.
People used to sign up for this kind of therapy because they were so damaged by the indoctrination by the self-hatred that indoctrination induced in themselves, that they would sign up to.
Yeah, the conversion therapy was not the limit of the abuse.
Please make me normal, and they would sign up for it, and it's a deeper, that torture is even deeper than
Right.
the actual torture that they signed up for.
Yeah,
So-
that's true. It's a mental torture. Yeah, a psychological,
Yeah.
self-imposed torture sometimes, because you've been taught that you're broken and that you need to be
Mhm.
fixed, and what you're feeling isn't right and isn't normal, which, you know, is
I mean,
obviously
I think
not the
that's
view
the
that we hold.
basis of Christianity, right?
Mm,
Is
yeah,
fundamentally that you're broken and you need to be fixed and saved.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Mine was definitely a guilt complex when it came to
Mm.
sin. I definitely wanted to follow God because I felt that sense of brokenness. What it really was this church doesn't like what I do, or this group
Right.
of people. It's always been a
Right.
social construct, but it's hard to see that when you don't have other people to talk to, or you live in a community that just doesn't accept you for who you are, and and you can't feel safe in talking about that, which is why
Yeah.
we have shows like this. Why there should be more advocacy and more people, you know, making these groups and spreading this awareness, because a lot of people think, oh, well, everybody, you know, hey, gay people are being represented in media, trans people being represented in media, everything's fine. It's we're not done yet.
No.
There's still so much more work to be done.
No, we're not done yet. We've come a long
Yeah.
way. We have a fair bit to go, and I really
Yeah.
appreciate your raising the subject and taking the time to talk. So, thanks.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate you calling in, and thank you so much for sharing your experiences. You're absolutely brave. You're absolutely brave, just for fucking existing as a trans woman, but also living in a time period where you have to see that, and there's not shows on the internet that are helping you reinforce a positive state of mind, or telling you that, hey, you are who you are and that is okay. Like, you know, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking that people have to do that, but we'll continue to try to make those changes, I guess. You know, can't give up.